welcome back to True Talk Cafe. I'm Renee, and we've got my amazing co-hosts, Anna, Carla, and Lolly with me. Say hello, ladies.
Hey everyone,
Hello.
so glad you're here with us today.
Hello. We have a fantastic episode lined up today. So we're excited to share some information, great information with you all today.
Oh, sounds fun.
All right, so today we're diving into the second part of our Acknowledge, Adjust, Align series. And this one's all about the power of the pivot. We're calling it Adjust, Pivoting for Change. Let's talk about how to shift direction when the plan hits a wall or when we hit a wall.
Let's.
That's right. So to add to our conversation today, we have a very, very special guest and friend of mine who I really appreciate her taking time to be here with us today, Patty Williams-Dong. She is the CEO and founder of Breaking Bounds. She's an executive coach and it's also a consulting firm. She's an expert in facilitating the evolution of business leaders and their organizations through executive coaching and strategic consulting services. Patty, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today.
And we're excited to have you here today, Patty. So before we dive in, can you tell all our listeners a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Yes, I will try to keep it brief. I feel like at 42, and I can get really lengthy. I feel like at 62, I'm gonna be real lengthy. But my life has been really centered in transformation. So as a kid, I traversed poverty and obviously was in a community that was incredibly loving and connecting and sort of surmised by a lack of resources. Before I understood like the words justice or liberation, I kind of knew it and felt it and always desired it. So I always sort of lived with this idea that things could be different and things could be better. And when I experienced transformation, I was like, oh, everybody needs this. I want to be wherever change and transformation happens. And so that led me to this beautiful professional journey, as you'll hear, just teaching and learning and leading in some really amazing ways, including with founding and leading Breaking Bounds Enterprises.
Excellent. We're excited to hear all about that and diving into the conversation. So I'm going to, carry on to, for the sake of time and for you to tell us all the things that we want to hear from you. So sometimes the hardest part isn't making the pivot. You already alluded to that just in your introduction.
Yeah.
It's realizing that you need to.
Yeah.
Staying too long in a comfort zone could cost you opportunities. So we'd like to ask you a couple of questions on that. When you think back, have you ever ignored a sign that it was time to pivot?
Yeah. So I'll start with this. Humbly, I'll sort of vacillate from two sides and start with first, I'm actually really, really good at pivoting. And I'll share why, but it doesn't mean it's not hard for me. And I'll share why that is too, right? So I'm really good at pivoting because I'm really good at releasing things. So I don't stay attached to things that just do not serve me. Right? Yeah, it's so I can see those signs pretty quickly. Some of those signs are I can immediately feel like my body feels tense, right? So those are signs that like as coaches and consultants, we advise our clients to like pay attention to. Like if you're in a meeting and your chest is tight, like that's a sign. If you're in a meeting and you are literally like swallowing your words and your body feels full and not a good way, that's a sign. So there, if if you are feeling like your feelings are welling up all the time and you're feeling like dysregulated, those are signs. So listen to your body. And I'm really good at being like, now the gap is shorter. Like when I was a kid, it was longer. It would take me like weeks to figure that out. And then in my 20s, I was like, I'm just experimenting, right? I'm just trying to figure life out. And it was taking a really long time to get to some of those data points to make it real. And now I can say, you know what, this doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel right. Then I start asking questions, right? So then I start saying, why doesn't this feel right to me? Right? So some of the signals are I listen to my body, I ask myself questions, and then I listen to myself. right? I listen to myself before I go ask somebody else. So we have this culture, especially in women, it's like you need all of this validation. It's like, go get feedback from your manager, go talk to your best friend, go talk to everybody and your mama around the corner. And it's like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Like, I need time to make up my own mind about things, right? And that's actually like a lot of what we like coach our clients, in coaching and consulting is like, we're going to give you space with this information, with yours and additional, and to like make up your mind about things. Right. So listen to my body. I spend time like asking myself questions and seeing what comes up for me. And then I trust that everything I want is on the other side of fear.
Absolutely.
Right. So I get to a point where I'm like, yeah, I'm nervous. I'm nervous to let this go or walk away. But I've practiced it so much that I'm like, there's something on the other side of this that is going to be more values aligned. I'm going to be able to sit in a meeting. I'm going to be able to sit across from someone. I'm going to be able to be in a space and feel like me. Right. So the times when there's values tension, my body is in tension, and I don't feel like me, those are the signals where I'm like, this something is not working here. It may not be like baby out with the bathwater, which is a horrible phrase if you think about it literally. It's a terrible phrase. So many idioms are like incredibly violent, right? But let's just use that one. It may not be that, but it may be something in the environment that just isn't working, or it may just be everything needs to go and you have to start fresh. But I'm really good at letting things go and like shortening the gap between that. The last thing I would say here is the reason why I'm good at pivoting and letting things go, yes, because I've practiced that sequence. But I also think like it comes from a place of worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was just saying, like Brene Brown in her entire TED talk about vulnerability, one of the key data points that she said as a sociologist was the people who were able to be vulnerable and sort of take that step was that they felt worthy of themselves. They felt worthy of their dreams. And so I think that also comes from it that like, I'm like, I am worthy of the dreams that I have in my heart and my soul. I'm worthy of living them out. Like my existence is my birthright. My the love that I want to carry out in the world, my achievement, those are my birthright.
Yeah.
Those are not just whimsical things. I am worthy of all of that. Right. And so that gives me like this courage and this muster to move forward with making some difficult decisions.
I love it, right? And it's, you didn't share about ignoring a sign. It sounds like you are good at pivoting and listening to them, right? And it's very, very important. I know Renee and we talked about it in our last episode, and Carla shared, we all have our own physical ailment, right? We know when it's starting to take a toll on us. Renee said her gut. I said my shoulder. Carla said, it's just the combination of a couple of things and getting out there and doing things, right? And we have to listen to those signs. We have to understand. And to your point, self-validation is the priority, right? We got to validate that these feelings are accurate and they're normal. So absolutely agree with you on that. I used to have a friend that would always ask me for advice. I'd give her advice, and then she'd go ask 20 other people. And so she'd be more confused. And ask any of the ladies here. I'm a truth teller. And she would come back to me and she goes, Anna, you said, and I should have never gone. And I'm like, okay, well, stop asking me, or ask me last if you feel like you need to come back, because I was the one that gave you the one that really aligned more with you. It's because I don't give you advice. I give you ideas for you to give your own self advice. To your point, we have Renee over here who's an ICF certified coach as well. So we do a lot of that training and deep diving, and we can't lead you. You know your answers. We just got to help you pull them out. So I love that. But in addition to signs, can you think of some internal cues that let you know a shift is needed? What are some of those internal cues that you would say to listen to?
Yeah. So internal cues that I listen to outside of my body. So this is a good question because I was literally just like coaching someone around this is like, I now am okay asking myself, I was just facilitating leadership development. That's what I was doing. And someone asked me, a young woman came up to me and she said, how did you know that this is what you wanted to do? right? And I was like, this is a good question. I think this was, young woman was maybe in her 20s. And I was like, I started asking myself after I would do things, and I would ask myself, do you like this? Is it fulfilling to you? The signal sort of was the courage to tell myself the truth, right? So there were some things that I'd be like, this brings a lot of money or a lot of the things that like makes my ego feel really good, but I kind of hate it. Right? And I just kind of gave myself permission to like let myself down. The other cue is I started to appreciate grief. So in American society, we don't appreciate grief. When a lot of other societies, like indigenous societies, they privilege it, like putting something to bed or sort of burying it or letting something die or sunset is just a part of just life for them. They have rituals, they have celebrations around it. In Adaptive Leadership by Tony Heisch, he talks about like grief is a necessary part of growth. So what I mean by that is like I've grieved the thought of this thing that I thought I wanted, and it wasn't actually the thing that I wanted. And I give myself now, that's like a sign for me. It's not a bad sign anymore. It's a good one.
Right.
Because it's me telling myself, you're growing. And there's something on the other side of this that is going to be more fulfilling because you're about to put this to bed. Denzel Washington, he talks about like, I'm a mom of three, 17, 9, and 4. Why this spaces, I don't know. That's my answer. It's like some big gaps in there, right? He talks, so as a parent, I just listen to folks and how they think about stewarding young people through the world. And he talked about like how he had to sort of let his son go, and he likened it to him like a private jet, which not a lot of us can liken ourselves to because we have not gotten on a private jet. But he said a private jet, when it ascends, it has to let go of a significant amount of fuel, right? And yes, it feels scary, but it's the only way that it can fly and take off. So like he had to really like remove himself and like take off the reins from his son, who's now a pretty successful actor. Um, so I say that to say like I give myself space to like let some things float down and like be okay with being sad about that relationship not working out, the relationship with the institution, right? The relationship with another person. And like say, I'm sad. And because multiple things can be true, I'm also happy about what I now get to do because that weight is gone. So I think the internal cue for me as you're sort of elevating is grief. I've learned, or loss. I've learned to translate that and metabolize that more quickly in my own personal and professional life.
Yeah, I love that. It's just kind of buttoning things up so that you can move on, right? And be ready to receive the next thing, right? We can't be one hand back here, one hand up here, right? We can't do that. And speaking of that, kind of like the next step, like normalizing setbacks because we all experience setbacks. We've all hit the wall more than one time, right? But the game changer is how we respond, to that setback, and pivots, they often start with a problem, correct? If you can recognize it that way. So, my question to you is, can you share a time when a setback forced you to take a different path and what happened?
Yeah, great question. I have so many of them. It's like trying to like, pull one out the hat right now. One setback that was really game changing for me, I'll speak about it professionally, or it's a professional instance that I think a lot of women who are professionals might be able to relate to, or just people in general. So I won't sort of name any names in this, but just like stories and concepts. But I worked for an institution, and it was like really, really high performing, high, really like high octane pace. You had to learn really quickly. you had to have like a lot of pedigree, right? But like pedigree was not the only thing. It just what got you in the door. You had to like actually show you knew what you were doing. So, and I am an achiever. I am a former Division I athlete, so I love competition. So this is like perfect for me, right? It was like go and fight and win and do it all over again every day. It was exhausting, but it was thrilling. Also, the mission was incredible, right? So I was like, I'm in. And I had done really well, right, with these amazing people who were just like stimuli, right? Just like on a petri dish. It was like we were fire sharp, fire and fire, iron sharpens iron. We did amazing things together. And I had been promoted pretty often within this institution. So you can imagine what it feels like, right? Like I feel like I'm on the top of my game. I'm feeling really great. Like I'm contributing. And but I'm still within a team. I'm not leading this team at the moment, right? I'm still like at like a senior level, but I'm not like leading the thing. So I decide, and it was the right decision that it was like time to like go off on my own. It's time to like grow up and go to college per se, move away from that thing. And I set my sights on taking on a different leadership role that was highly coveted in the organization. And that was a challenge in itself. So I was like, I'm game for it. And I get it. And I hate it. Like I hate like I thought I was gonna love it. Like this was like the most cognitive dissonance I've ever had in my entire life. Right. Like it was like for real a circle and then it was a triangle. And I was like, wait, what happened? Like I it was like the whiplash of the expectation not being met was crushing. I also like thought I trusted my gut. So that was hard too, right? I was like, man, can I not trust my gut? Can I not trust all those instincts that I was just talking about before? Because there were so many parts about the role overall that I actually really didn't like. I liked a portion of it, but I didn't like all of it. And it was grueling. And I had to like admit to myself that I just don't like this. And I also had to admit to myself, y'all, for real, I was like, I'm not really good at this. Right? Like, I'm not, like, there are people out here that should be doing this for better because there's really high stakes here. Right? And I realized, like, I could probably have worked to be good at it. It would have taken me like 400% to become good at it when somebody could probably do this and love it. And what I think that example taught me, right, was I pivoted and I thought I lost. But what it opened up for me was this question of like, well, what do you really like now? What do you really want to do? And so one of the strategic moves, and I'll give a different example second, but like one of the strategic moves that I made was I love creating vision boards, right? Because I love just like these moments where I get to just create what I feel versus like having to paint something really logical. Like I have to do a lot of that, like in my work, like for consulting, where I have to help people make sense of things. But vision boarding, I don't. Like I just get to like put my hand on a picture and feel the feels and cut it out and whatever the words come in. So I started creating literally these like visions for myself, right? And that helped me sort of get comfortable with this idea of myself and like my professional self that like you are more than what you just did. You're more than that mistake. And it helped me like make that pivot, right? It helped me get that sense of assurance, even though everything in front of me said, you just failed. Girl, you didn't make the right decision, right? It was like all of these data points that were saying like you messed up, right? And it was public. That was the other thing that was so hard because I was a good leader in the organization. So everybody was like, I can't wait for you to do well. It's like, I didn't. It was terrible. So that really sort of that self-esteem, that confidence nosedive helped me figure out how to sort of Coco Groff it. Did you all hear what Coco Groff just did, right? She said, oh, when everybody else was cheering the opponent's name, she said, I just started cheering my own. So imagine a crowd of people, I can't remember the young woman's name, just cheering someone else's name like fervently. And here she is by herself. She's like, she just started saying, go, 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 go. And I was like, I hope everybody hears that because it mattered to me to say, even if you weren't good at that, you're good at something else. What do you want? What's your vision? And like look forward. There was another instance, and I'll say this because these were like some really critical tactical lessons I learned, that I get into a new role, and after this experience, right? Because I was like, I gotta go. Like, I have to leave. This isn't good for me. This is clearly not good for the institution. And I find a role that I think is a better fit. And I have all of this like knowledge and leadership expertise. And I feel like, yes, I can lead, but knowing it and leading it and applying it and trying it on are two totally different things. And so in the beginning, I was like, Harvard Business School, they have like a lot of like different types of leaders. And one of the leadership styles they have is like an outpacer. And an outpacer sounds good, but it's not. It's basically someone that runs ahead of their team, right? And you might feel egotistically like it's like catch up. But the reality is you have no one following you. You're not leading anybody. You're just leading with your ideas. And so I was sort of running fast, and this is really personal to share, but I think it can help some folks. When I would like sort of look back and slow down, I had like this vision. I had come in, I had looked at the organization, done my analysis. We were not where I wanted us to be. Right? And this is why I was hired, right? I was hired to come in and sort of elevate what we were doing. And I took that really seriously. Once I set the vision, I thought we were moving in the right direction, and people were like, I don't like it. And honestly, I kind of don't like you. Right. And I kind of didn't like them. I mean, this is like real talk, you all, right? Like, I know, it was a complete cultural challenge. Like, I had some folks who were like, I'm with you. I don't know if I can run that fast, but I like what you're doing. And then I had some folks who were like, I don't know if I'm going to be here anymore. Right. What that taught me, Renee, I think your point is really great, is I had like, if you want to lead, even if those folks turn out to be not a good fit for where you want to go, you still have to slow down. And so I slowed down. I got connected with them. I figured out what they wanted. I was able to share like the vision that I wanted, the roles that were needed. And we were able to have some like honest conversations. And I realized that a part of my like self-preservation mode, like thinking back to my childhood, in order to traverse poverty, one of the protective mechanisms I had was go by all means. And like, we like to think because we're like grown, like that stuff doesn't affect us, right? It did. And it made people feel really distant and really cold. So people were like, you don't see me. You don't see my talent. And I was like, whoa, that is not what I intended, but that is what they experienced. So Renee, I think to your point, this really changed the way I led. It stopped me from perceiving a lack of pace and performance as anything but people need you to pause. And so I started pausing more. I started checking in with folks more. I started assessing, like, is this a good fit, and asking them and giving them real agency to determine if this was right for them. Right. Versus, I think when a new leader comes in, they could say, hey, this is what we're doing, like it or not, get on, get off. Right. Like this was a moment that like was really a turning point for my leadership, where I was like, no, girl, it's your job. It is your job to slow down, connect, reassess, and give agency to figure out how everyone can move forward. And if this is not right for them, they should be able to make that choice.
Yeah, I mean, such great self-awareness, to just slow yourself down, because I know I've been in that outpacer category and look back and was like, oh,
You were
my thing used to be get on the bus or get left.
Right. Right. Get right or get left. I think it's a phrase.
So, I mean, to hear you say that, it's like, it's so true. And I would look back like, okay, nobody's with me. So really, how good of a leader am I? I'm not very good right now. So, taking that time to slow down and really connecting, it fills you up, right? Because you're really hearing what they want or what they don't want, right? Are they with you? Are they not with you? Do you want to, do you have to do something to help them, get on board, or politely show them the door,
Yes.
right? Because sometimes that happens. The other thing I love that you said was, you've been sharing that you really check in with yourself. And I love that you asked yourself the question and you said, cheer for yourself. Because we're all going to be in those rooms where it's you against the world or city hall, as they say, right? And you have to be okay and go, okay, go Renee, go Patty, go Carla, go
Yeah.
Anna. You have to do that sometimes to encourage yourself to continue to move forward. So, I wanted to ask you, besides, saying to yourself, like, okay, Patty, you can do this and keep it moving. But what tools do you use to reflect and learn from the challenges that you have experienced?
Yeah. So I've developed quite a bit, right? So even as you just said it, I was like, there are some that I've just designed like this year, right? So, and sort of like reflecting back, like some of the like practical tools I use. Let me start here. The tools I use are for me, and this is what I would encourage people, right? This is going to sound really controversial. And I know this because I've experienced it my entire life. So I'm like totally fine saying it. But like, I do not ascribe to be liked. I do not show up in the okay. Okay. I see. Right. Like I never have. Like my mom is always like, yep, that's always been you. Like I don't have like any test that I've ever taken, like literally any leadership test that I've ever taken has never said people pleaser. It has literally never said people pleaser. Right. And we must be cut from the same cloth. I'm like, it has never said that. I think because early on when I was a kid, I saw particularly a lot of like Gen X women whose literal like the hampering of society told them that like your existence is actually your body, your words, your mind is to actually be in service of everybody else except for you. Like literally everybody else. And my mom is Gen X. And so I saw how much that robbed them of their own like connection to themselves, right? So even when I was like, this, my mom was like, she's like, you realize stuff like really early on. So like I said, I didn't have the vocabulary, but I would watch and I'd be like, I don't like that, right? Like, why can't you just get up and do something, right? Like, I have to take care of the kids. And I'd be like, why can't you do that and that? So I think like you are the only person who can give yourself permission to be you. And I take that very seriously. So I don't look to be liked as the validation that I should move forward with something. And I've practiced that since I was a kid. Now, I do look for connection. I'm human. I do look for belonging. I want to feel like I'm in spaces with people that feel deep, and bonding. But I do not look, I look for respect first. I look for like genuine connection, but it's okay. I've gone to France before and Paris and love Paris. I love it. One of the things that Paris privileges in culture is like, for example, we went to a market and they were like, do you like it? In French. And we were like, and they were like, okay. And we were like that. And our tour guide explained that culture to us. Basically, they were like, they would rather you spit their food out than tell them you like it because they're not actually trying to capture the entire market and be everything for everybody. They're just trying to make their food for the people who love it. And so, right, you're like, she's like, I can't second home coming on. We connecting because I feel like that's been sort of my spirit is to like find my people, find my place, but it's okay not to be liked or to be like a thing for everybody. So I say that to say like the tools that I use are to find that, to find like who are you and what do you like and how do you want to show up in the world and like be okay with pushing that stuff away because I've experienced how full that feels. I've experienced, standing on a stage in front of thousands of people and like genuinely feeling an audience saying, I'm with you. I got what you were saying. I've witnessed mentoring or coaching people who have, at the end of it, they say, I don't know what I would have done without this. Like I've experienced these affirmations that say, Patty, when you are you in the world, that works. Do that, girl, do that. So the way I sort of practice that is, like I said, I start with envisioning. This is something we do with a lot of our clients because even when you've reached like sort of a pinnacle in your career as a CEO, it could be true that you have not spent enough time with yourself. And you might be really far from your values. So in envisioning, we ask folks like, what are they? What are your top 3 values? Not 5, not 10, not 7. What are your top 3? How would you describe how they show up in the world? This is really important, right? Don't make it general. Again, go back to that culture. How does it show up in the world for you? And how do you want it to show up in this point in your life, right? So we have them get really, really clear on that like vision for yourself, that the values of yourself. And then we have them create themselves in 5 years. And it's when I say the vision, I mean literally whatever comes to your mind. So when I first did this with my executive coach, who was phenomenal, I really couldn't envision it outside of my job. I was like, this is treacherous. This is sad. This is how I felt. Like, this is sad. Girl, you gotta do a better job. And once she was like, okay, it's okay. Just like close your eyes. And all I could envision was seeing my back walking through an open road. And she was like, how does that make you feel? And why is that vision important to you? And I realized my values are freedom, independence, and wealth. And that open road represented all of that for me. That open road is what I need to have every day in my life, is possibility for transformation and change. So I do a lot of envisioning, right? And I spend time with my dreams. I have literally a notebook that sorry, that was an odd view, but a notebook that my assistant gave me is called Brilliant Ideas. And I don't journal. So what I say is like, this stuff is for me. When I have an idea and a dream, I just write it down. And whatever comes to me, I just write it down. I also have like a notepad of like leadership lessons learned in my phone that also keep track of. So this is like the ad hoc stuff I do. What I'm trying to say here is I just capture my dreams. I capture how I feel. Now, making them real, I actually have a real system around that. So but I like my creative process, right? I'll send myself a voice note. I'll write it in my book. I'll write it in my notes. And I just give myself the freedom to let those things evolve, right? Other things I have to put on a clock and a timeline, but like not my whole life, right? I also have 3 children. So like probably 90% of my life has to be on a clock. So whenever I do not have to be on somebody else's timeline, I just let the spirit guide me, you know? But other times there are systems that I use where I actually do, my husband and I do my own after we do our family planning. We do annual strategic planning, like a real strategic plan, y'all. Like it turns out it's like 5 to 7 pages at the end of the day. We ask similar questions that I guide my clients to do, which is go back to your mission, your vision, your value proposition, your strategic priorities, how you will resource it, how will you structure it? Did you achieve it? Like we do a very intense family annual planning cycle, and then I do my own. Right. And when I say I get to the bottom, y'all, like we get to, so what are the priorities and what do they look like per quarter? What do they look like per month? Okay. I see someone saying like, yes.
You can ask them. I've shared this. Very similar what I do.
Yeah. I even, with my team, we do monthly priority planning and I do 2. So we assess our pipeline and our strategic priorities against our annual priorities. And then I step back and I do my own personal one from that end of year strategic planning.
Love it.
Right. And I go back and I say, has this year presented the opportunities? How are you feeling? Are you feeling free? Do you have independence? Have you built the wealth that you want? And then I go back to how I envision that happening. And here's a trick, right? Right, Renee? Like I see you shaking your head. You're like, yeah. Here's a trick. I give myself permission for things to change. The good thing about, right? The good thing about strategic priorities is that while they're pointed, they are broad enough, right? So sometimes the activity to get to a certain thing might change, or a number or something, verb, but the whole concept usually doesn't change. But I give myself permission to say, like the way that I envision doing that, that's not actually shaping up to be true right now. There's something better. And I just write that into the plan, right? Or this year we have been presented with lots of lots of opportunities in one particular revenue stream than last year. And I was projecting based on last year's data. And so we decided we were going to sort of prioritize that stream and resource that stream. Right. And so I was like, great. So I do annual strategic planning. We do quarterly setbacks. I do monthly pauses, and I'm very intentional about that time. I usually do it on a day that I'm literally offline. Like nothing else is going to distract that day, which I think is really important for people and professionals. So those are some of my systems. I give myself creative systems to let things flow and envision and create. And then I give myself some like discipline systems.
Love it. And actually, that's a great segue into our next question here. But I do want to share, a lot of what you mentioned again is back to acknowledging and writing it down. People have always asked me, how do you manage to take 2-3 vacations a year? I wrote them down and I planned for them. Goes back to my quarterly thing. Like, I pay myself back. And Renee and I have, and Carla and Lolly, we've all spoken about this in the acknowledge episode. And then in our fireside chat that we did, it's very, very important to continuously acknowledge, reassess, and adjust, right? And that's what we're talking about today is adjusting. And you mentioned a couple of times within your conversation that sometimes you paused and you adjusted again, which you had previously adjusted. And that's a great segue into micro pivots, right? The small shifts that make a big impact or have a big result. So not all pivots need to be dramatic. They don't all have to be like Anna. It's okay. Sometimes just a minor tweak in strategy or mindset unlocks new results, right? So when you think about that, have you made a small pivot that ended up having a big impact?
Yeah. Micro pivot. Yeah. So I've made a few. I'm just trying to like in my head, like it's like I'm trying to like pick the one. Yeah, I think I can mention two, and I'll do this pretty quickly. One micro pivot was I had to break up with a client, right? And that matters because this was supposed to be like a long-term contract. And so that it was a big shift in like how we did business, but it was this sort of micro shifts where I was like, hey, I don't think that this is working out, for either one of us. And so, like, that shift, I think the reason why I'm acknowledging that is because I was realizing that the real shift that I needed to make, that this relationship wasn't allowing me and really my team to do, was to healthily show up for our lives because we were spending so much time with this client. So, one of the pivots, maybe the micro pivot, was identifying that I wasn't giving myself enough time to take care of myself. And that was just that realization alone. And then I looked at my calendar, and every time this client was sort of like all over the place, right? And so every time that I would have like go for a walk, or it's sort of these times that matter to me, and even for my team that matter to them, like whether it was time with their family or just time away, this this relationship wasn't allowing for us to live out in that way. And so while I'm sort of identifying the client relationship, what was the micro pivot was realizing that our health mattered, and that like showing up for ourselves in our lives took more precedent than the revenue that we were going to gain like long term. And that was just a pivot to say like it is actually important for us to take those walks. Right? It is actually important for us to sign off at a certain time. It's important for us to respect each other's boundaries. When those started to get blurred, I was like, yeah, what's blurring this?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it was like a micro pivot. So I think that what I'm trying to say is a smaller pivot was, while my business is called Breaking Bounds, there are, and this is a phrase that I've shared with people, like my love for the people that I love is unconditional, but my resources are finite. Both things can be true. And so I'm like, I could love you to the high heavens, and I still have a limited amount of time. I have a limited amount of resources, and I have to be really vigilant and careful about those. And I do the same thing in business. And so when we realized that we were not practicing the health that we wanted this entrepreneurial journey for us to bring us, a micro pivot was saying, so we have to change the thing that is not helping us do that. And so now I go on the walks, I take the bike rides during the day, I do those things. Because, once my kids get home, y'all, it's like nothing's going to happen. It's just going to be like dance and basketball. So I'm like, I have to do this stuff during the day to take care of myself. And the last thing I'll say around this is like, this is all what I'm saying is also substantiated by like real science. Wharton Executive Education last month and took a course called the Neuroscience of Business. And it was specifically to understand how the brain innovates and how it makes decisions. There is so much science about what it means to unlock your social brain and how much that contributes to how effective you are at making decisions. And we think it's like shishi foo foo and like the get to, we think it feels like fuzzy, but it's actually neurologically positions us to be better leaders. One of those things is literally moving your body produces mental clarity. Right. And so they showed us so many case studies on like how they did this for athletes, like what it meant to get athletes into practice and then go, to do academic studies, or what it meant to put doctors, into like movement, or firefighters, or people that sort of face like pretty high stakes situations, what their bodily activity means for their ability to make good decisions as leaders. And so that this is not just like Patty thing, like move your body for your own health so that you can become a better leader. This is like science backed. And that was so reaffirming for us, like during that time, to say, yes, our health is our brand. Our health is how we even show up for anybody else. And so we have to first show up for ourselves. So the micro pivot was just saying our health matters. And we're going to do it.
It does. And it absolutely does, right? And when you said that, it's funny because I'm walking 3 miles in the evening now, and that started recently because I'm like, nope, I need this. I need this. So my husband's waiting. We're going to go out there walking a little. But, that's probably why we had a part 1 and a part 2 when it comes to self-love, help, self-care, because it is very important. I know it's a cliche. You can't fill from an empty cup, but you truly cannot fill from an empty cup. So I love that, right? And sometimes we do want it more than our clients, and we can't. We simply can't. We have to learn when to shut that door and say no. So thank you so much for all of these great insights, Patty. I know Carla has some recognizing the need to pivot tips to share with us. So Carla, take it away.
Yes, thank you so much again, Patty. You've given us so much and so little for us to start and being really purposeful on some of the things that we can do, because I know there's so much more that we could share, but we're running out of time. So we're going to go into recognizing the need to pivot. And we have already some tips that Patty has shared with us, such as making sure that you're giving yourself grace. And making sure that you're trusting your gut. A lot of times we don't really trust something that we already feel is wrong and that we need to pivot from. But sometimes it's time to adjust, and we need to trust that. Also knowing your worth and knowing that sometimes it's okay when others may not feel the same way you feel or not be in line with them. I think that's something that I personally sometimes have trouble with, because I am a people pleaser based on my zodiac sign. So I'm working on that. So I align myself with people that are not like me so I can learn from you all. So I'm working on that. But what I think was the most powerful that you shared with us today is that your health is your brand. I think that is something that all of us need to continue to do better in. But also pay attention to patterns of burnout or stagnation. They're signals, not flaws. And that's something that Patty did mention a few times. So I think that is very important and something that we want to make sure we put on our checklist. Also, reevaluate your goals quarterly. I know you said something that is something that you do not only with your clients, but also with your family. I honestly don't do so well with that, so I will work on that. But think about what used to fit and it doesn't fit anymore. I think a lot of times we are fearful of change and just what could happen, what's on the other side that we don't know. But I recall a recent quote by, who was it? I forget who was it. But someone said, don't let your fear be bigger than your purpose. Tyler Perry. It was Tyler Perry. So, and I think that really stuck to me, because it is something that I think a lot of times we're just fearful of what's unknown, that we don't take that leap of faith. So also listen to your intuition. If something feels off, it probably is. So make sure that you do listen to that gut feeling and do the pivot whenever it's time. And skills over degrees, making sure that, we're thinking about what are some of the things that others are doing that that we can make sure that we continue to evolve and look for other opportunities to learn about things that we can do differently. So thank you so much again for that.
All right. Thank you, Carla. Great tips, and we will have those in our show notes for our audience. We'd like to wrap up and thank Patty for coming on and sharing such impactful insights on how to navigate and to pivot. Right? I've wrote a few down. Being honest, I love that, being honest with yourself, asking those questions. And we really, truly appreciate you joining the pod crew, Patty. So how can our listeners connect with you on your social platforms?
Yes. So I am Patty Williams Downs on LinkedIn. That's the most professional platform. I am Patty Downs _ Breaking Bounds on IG, and Patty Downs on Facebook, which my 17-year-old says, don't say anymore. I'm like, it's a good place. I know. It's just, he can't like type everything on his phone. He thinks it's outdated. But yes, please find me on those platforms. And if you want to connect for any executive coaching, leadership development, or strategy consulting with Breaking Bounds, you feel free to find us on www.breakingbounds.com.
Thank you for that.
Time to wrap it up, guys. I know, and we're not done. So I guess there's a lot to wrap up from today, right? But a lot of it evolves around give yourself permission to evolve, adjust your path as needed. It doesn't mean that you're giving up. It means you're learning and growing. And so if today's episode hit home, drop us a message or share it with someone stuck in their pivot moment so that they can continue to evolve through their changes.
Absolutely. Also, follow True Talk Cafe on our social platforms. If you want more, we'll be back next time with the final part of our series, all about alignment in action. We will see you then. And don't forget, your next move doesn't have to be big, just intentional. Talk soon, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.